Hello, my name is Joshua Fleck. Thank you for taking time to watch this video on risk management. Today we're going to learn how to identify risks and hazards, assess those hazards, and then implement plans to control and supervise to ensure that we mitigate as much risk as possible. This will be a valuable training. It's something you can apply to everyday life, though it is a mandatory training in the United States military. Before we get started, I'd ask that you take time to get hydrated, remove unnecessary distractions, and prepare yourself to learn. Have a pen and paper handy because we will be doing some interactive training together. Okay, so risk management, our objectives here are to learn how to improve our ability to identify risks and hazards, how to assess those risks and hazards, and then how to implement controls to alleviate or mitigate those risks and hazards so that we can more safely or more confidently execute a task or mission. This is something valuable to us as learners and as adults going on about our everyday life, whether it be travel, whether it be managing a project, or making an important life decision. So when we're identifying hazards, the first step is to identify what we're taking on. So in the United States military, this is a common step in maybe we're running a range or a mission, but for the everyday person, it could be a commute. I want you to reflect on your own personal experiences when you've maybe made decisions based on the hazards that were inherent in your task. So use your imagination, draw from that experience, and take some time to reflect throughout this course on effective things you've done to create and prepare for a better outcome. So how likely are they? So if we're traveling, we know that vehicle accidents are extremely likely. How damaging? If we're traveling on the highway, it can be life-threatening. If we're doing something like making a life decision, like taking out student loans to go to school, so we know the debt is going to occur unless we can get some scholarships to mitigate that, and we know that that debt is a challenge that we will face because it does need to get paid off. So let's identify and then assess how likely are these hazards to occur and how damaging they will be. So when we're trying to implement controls on these hazards, you're going to avoid what you can. So on the example of going to school, you're going to try to apply for some scholarships, maybe get a job on campus to help alleviate some of those debts, and you can prepare yourself ahead of time. So you're going to take steps to ensure that you can mitigate that. So if you're going to go on a hike, avoid trails that are going to be worse in bad weather. Prepare to have substantial hydration as necessary, and take precautionary measures. If it might rain, you might want to have a poncho or umbrella or something of that nature. Also, maybe like a first aid kit. So start implementing ways to control and address those hazards. Take a minute, just reflect on your own life experiences and situations when you were in charge of a project, you were making a life decision, or so of that nature, where you had to take time to assess and identify all those risks and how you made those decisions and how you mitigated those challenges to be successful. Go ahead and pause the video, take some time to reflect on those. All right, so now you've had time to reflect on the past. Let's take some time to consider a life choice or task you will face in the future. Again, pause the video if necessary and write that task down on a piece of paper. All right, so let's create a plan based on the hazards that you can identify. So what are the hazards around this particular task or plan life choice you have to make? What risks do they pose? Again, remember, what's the likelihood of it occurring? How dangerous is it? And then take some time to write down some controls. Again, pause the video, write down those hazards, write down the likelihood, and then write down how damaging it will be, and then some controls. So when we are planning to mitigate and manage risks, we need to also search out and seek out resources. That could be maps if you're doing travel or hiking, as mentioned earlier. It could be weather reports if you're doing something outside or potentially traveling on a road that could be impacted by the weather. Do a packing list or other checklists. In the United States Army, we use what's called a deliberate risk assessment worksheet. That way we can track all this information on one piece of paper and present it to the commander and reference it as we move forward in that mission or task. And then do some of your own research. See if there's any other factors you hadn't considered and any other resources you can use to mitigate those risks and hazards. Now I'm going to take some time to show you the deliberate risk assessment worksheet that the United States Army uses. So in this top column, you will dictate what mission or task you're doing when you're preparing this document, your name, rank, grade, and duty position, the unit, your work email, telephone, and this is also that they can identify and contact the person who is assessing these risks. And then on this document, you can create subtasks for each of these events by clicking the plus button, and you can remove them by clicking the bottom button. And you'll just describe what you're doing. So for the analogy of travel, you could put in here, the mission is driving to Wright State. And then on this one, you could put something like fueling your vehicle. Now this may seem silly, but taking into consideration all the different possible subtasks and things you will do will help you to consider additional hazards, such as spilling fuel. Then you will do the risk assessment, and it'll be low, and then controls, things like exercising caution, who, you would be you, and then what the residual risk level is. Another thing like this could be a such thing as construction. And we know that this hazard can be distracted drivers. And you can add this again and add things like workers. And this one would actually be a higher risk level. So you'll pay more attention, right? And then once you do defensive driving, it could be low. So then you'll have your residual risk level. And then you'll have your overall supervision plan. And you'll just tell a story of how you're going to supervise that. And then the approval. One other interesting thing here I want to show you that applies to everyone and helps tie together these ideas of likelihood or probability and the severity or damage that can occur. So you'll see this is a matrix. So the more frequent or probable or likely event is, then it's going to put you in a higher category of threat or risk. And then the severity of that impact will also increase the level of hazard. And then this, of course, will be approved by the commander or whoever owns it. And this has clear instructions on how to fill it out. Hopefully, as we took time to reflect on risk management and learn about those steps and reflect on our own personal experiences where we've used it sometimes maybe without even thinking about it, hopefully you've seen how important it is and how necessary it is to everyday life. Now, that last thing I showed you, that document, the deliberate risk assessment worksheet or draw, is not something that you would do for everyday small tasks and events. Certainly not something you'd use in every area of your own life. However, that tool is still valuable and necessary and required in the United States Army, and it really helps you compile all your details and information, and really helps kind of put a picture to the matrix and the dynamics of the risk management process. So I hope it was still a valuable tool to each person watching this video, even if you're not in the military. And I hope it helps you to continue to improve and sharpen your skills, because as you get better at risk management, you will not only be better at doing things safely and more effectively, but also more confidently. And that applies even to life decisions, as we mentioned. So thank you so much for taking time to watch this video. If you have any questions, please reach out to me via my email at fleck.36@wright.edu. Thank you so much for your time, and you have a great day. Goodbye.